So today I have an exciting introduction for you, and that is my narrative collection of fabrics. As you've probably noticed with Anna Maria Textiles, I have been very committed to bringing you some interesting and beautiful woven textiles. And narrative is very special in the fact that I've brought together very different types of weaves all in one collection. You can see that this is a pretty thick bundle, but it's actually only 9 pieces all folded up in here. And I want to go through each of the 3 different weave styles with you to try and give you some confidence and some understanding in how these fabrics are made and how you can sew with them. So, as always, we have 3 different colorways, even though we only have 9 pieces in this collection. First, we have the vintage colorway. And the first one I'm going to show you is this beautiful piece here. I'm not great with remembering names of fabrics, but that's why we have a website and lookbook. So if you go to the lookbook page at Anna Maria Textiles, you'll be able to see all these fabrics with their names and their SKU numbers. You'll be able to search which shops have not just this collection, but even every individual SKU. You'll be able to search a shop close to you and online. So this one is a jacquard weave. And the thing that's wonderful about jacquards is that they weave through the front and the back. So even though the color styles are a little bit different on the front and back because of how they're woven, they're really pretty much two-sided. You can see how fluid and beautiful this is. It's very drapey, but it's pretty thick. So it's going to be a little bit thicker than a quilting cotton, but it's really drapey and beautiful for so many things. So that color is the vintage colorway. And then we have it in this beautiful rosy pink and kind of tangerine and peach in the lush colorway. And in the cheery colorway, we have these gorgeous plums and purples, pink, lavender. I just love this one. These aren't especially different front to back. But if you wanted a little variation in a project, you could definitely flip them front to back for a little bit of color difference, okay? I've got some fun project ideas for you on these pieces. I think I might have called this one Your Move or something like that because it reminds me of a game board. Okay, so the next one that I did is a twill. Now, a twill is woven not just up and down, but also to the side. Twill actually is what a lot of denim fabrics are. And so that automatically tells you that it's a little bit of a heavier weight. So I did these gorgeous stripes, which I am so excited about. It's a very sturdy fabric, but it's still pretty fluid. Look at that. So pretty. Now, when you see these in the stores, you'll notice that this width is a little bit wider than 45 or 44. But I think this one's called Director because it's all going in one direction. But that's kind of good because of the shrinkage. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. And I love this colorway too. This is the Lush colorway. And guess what? I'm wearing pants out of it. I'll talk about that in a minute too. I'm always saving extra details for later. And look at this beautiful colorway. I love this one. This one to me just like screams cushions for your porch. I absolutely love this color. This one, not really two-sided, right? The back side is going to be more dull because of how the twill is woven. But I would say this is a perfect bottom weight. Naomi at Northcott made a gorgeous like set where she had a wraparound skirt and also a blazer out of this fabric. But it's not like really, really heavy, but it's beautiful for a bottom weight garment. So that is the twill. And finally in the collection, I did a triple gauze. I wasn't really positive what I was getting into when I decided on the design that I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do a design that achieved this look. And so in working very closely with our mills, what it ended up being was a triple gauze. A lot of you are probably familiar with a double gauze. And when we say double or triple gauze, that literally means that there is 1, 2, and even 3 layers of a thinner fabric and they are woven together in certain spots. With a lot of double gauzes that you've seen out there, like with the baby fabrics, there's just a few little pricks here and there that keep the layers together. In this fabric, the places that they're kept together are where you see the color changes. So where you see those stripes coming together to form a plaid, that's where they're being woven through from front to back. So this one looks different on the back, and I actually think it's like extremely cool looking from both sides. If you were to cut in this middle part right here, you would be able to separate and see the 3 layers of hot pink, red, and black gauze that are all on top of each other, okay? So that's what a triple gauze is. But in terms of how it feels, it's so squishy and nice. And something that I haven't done yet with this one, but I really think would be beautiful and so soft and sweet, is a receiving blanket for a baby, because they're so soft, and especially once they're washed, they have this beautiful texture to them. When you see them in the shop and in person, they almost feel a little bit silky, but they are 100% cotton. All these fabrics are 100% cotton. I love how this one looks on the back too. And so once they're washed, however, that silkiness gets more cottony feeling because it draws up just a little bit. But if you just cut a length of fabric and bound the edges, I think it would make the most darling receiving blanket, especially in this piece right here. I think this would make an awesome receiving blanket for any old baby, boy or girl. I love that. Obviously, I love it. I made it. Okay, but I want to talk about washing with you, because part of why I really wanted to go over all these fabrics with you is to take away some of the fear in using them, and also to inspire some projects, okay? So what I did is I created an information sheet for you, and you can go to Anna Maria Textiles and you can look up this collection, which is called Narrative, and there'll be a little tab there that says, click here for more resources or download the info sheet. And it's a little guide that looks like this. And what I did is I went through every single fabric, the twill, the jacquard, as well as the triple gauze, and I created a guide for you on how to wash it, how to dry it, how to press it, sew with it, cut with it, and some expectations for you in terms of the shrinkage on the length of the fabric, the width of the fabric, things you might want to consider when you're cutting, sewing, stitch length, needle type, those sorts of things. In general, the best thing that you can do in deciding how to wash, wear, and care for these fabrics is to dig in and try and use your own experience as your guide. But to take away some of the fear, I've created this guide sheet for you, which I hope that you find helpful. Now, on that note, I also decided to go ahead and have a piece here that's been washed and just pulled out of the dryer so you can see what happens and what it looks like. So again, I can hopefully take away a little bit of fear. Okay, so this piece right here in the cherry colorway, you can see is very supple and silky looking. And I just want to show you, same piece. This is what it looks like when I've pulled it out of the dryer. Okay, so obviously it looks like stuff that you pull out of the dryer when you're washing your clothes. So it's a bit more wrinkly. It did sit in there for a minute because I was busy. I didn't get to the dryer as soon as it buzzed. So, but in terms of the fray, you can see it frayed, of course, a bit. And of course, there are some threads here, which you would expect. And you see that even if you pre-wash your quilting cottons. But this is not a fabric that just absolutely shreds and falls apart. So I am going to press this over here at my ironing mat. Some of the width and length that you lose when you wash these goods actually returns a bit once you start pressing them. Now, the thing I love about this jacquard in particular is once you get those long threads cut off, you actually have the most beautiful, perfect little short fray that makes it perfect for a scarf or a wrap or a lightweight blanket. To state the obvious, yes, I would definitely pre-wash these fabrics before you begin your sewing, because these are, I don't always pre-wash my quilting cottons, to be honest with you. I don't think they shrink enough to make me really concerned about it, but I definitely would pre-wash these. So I've just pressed this little corner here, and you can see I've got it nice and smooth again. But also, before I sew, I would just go around and I would trim off these longer threads here. But you can see this gorgeous little natural fray that happens. It almost looks exactly like the fray that is on the selvage edge there. That kind of gives you the idea that you could have a no-sew project of a beautiful wrap. And in fact, we've shown that on some of my social media, and I'm going to grab my favorite one right here. So I actually cut, I think it's a 2-yard length of the other colorway, and I use this as a wrap. And I've washed this a few times, and all I have done is cut those longer length threads off, and I've washed it a few times, and I haven't gained any more fray from it. So it's so beautiful for that. So you can partner with one of your friends and use a 2-yard length piece and cut it on the length down the middle. Or you could use the whole width of fabric if you like. So one other project that we have, I mean, we're calling it a free pattern, but I don't know if just squares is a pattern. I suppose it is, but we have this beautiful patchwork quilt idea. I didn't design anything that had a lot of complication. This is really just showing off the weave styles and colors of the Narrative collection. So I'm just recommending 12-inch squares. We've cut 25 of them. You really only need about 14 inches to wash first and then cut from, but I just went ahead and got 2/3 of everything so that I could kind of pick and choose where on the plaids I wanted to cut. I cut 2/3 of all 9 prints, threw them in the wash, pressed them out, and I cut 3 pieces of all of them. So 3 squares out of all of them at 12.5 inches. Okay. So that gave me 27 squares, which is 2 more than I need, but it gave me some to play with. And I've got them laid out on the wall. Haven't cut these yet because I was wanting to show you what it looked like straight out of the wash before it was pressed. But the cutting for this fabric is no different than cutting any fabric. Sometimes when you're working with plaid fabrics that are woven and not printed, folks are worried about the weave of the fabric wiggling around underneath your grid. But I say you use that to your advantage and you wiggle it right back where you want it to keep it in line. I have found that these are woven so beautifully straight that just a little tug to get them where I want them in line with my square is perfectly sufficient to cut out my squares. So I'm actually just going to line up against there, and I'm not going to cut any differently than I ever do. In terms of my sewing, obviously I have a lot of notes in that PDF, but in terms of my sewing, I am going to go ahead and take a little bit deeper seam allowance, just like a 3/8 instead of a 1/4 inch. And I'm going to press my seams open on this because these seams are going to be a bit thicker. I don't really want to press them all to one side because I think that's going to give me too much of a ridge. Okay, so now we have this pretty little square that we can put on this little hole behind me to fill in. Okay, so in terms of the fray on these pieces, once they've been cut, they definitely are going to, if they've been manipulated a lot, drug around with you from quilt guild to sewing group to soccer practice to your house to your sewing room and all over the place, if you have some cut pieces that keep moving around with you for days on end, they are going to start to fray. So do keep in mind that you want to take care with these pieces. But if you've just cut them and you're carrying them straight to the sewing machine, you really don't have to have any extra care in sewing and handling these than you do any fabric. They are going to behave differently, but I find that just a 3/8 inch seam allowance is perfect for them, a little bit smaller stitch length to keep everything intact. When I sew garments with these, if they're not going to be lined, serging the edges or zigzagging the edges to finish the edges is a great idea. I did show you my pants already. These are the starlet trousers, which is a pattern that I've had out for a while. So again, I used the Twill, which is a perfect bottom weight. And I also have shipping very soon. There's been a bit of a delay on the tissue, but I also have this beautiful new pattern called the Rosebud Quilted Coat, and it is behind me over here. You can tell which my favorite colors are already because I've already made a scarf out of it and a jacket out of it. But the Rosebud Quilted Coat is a lined shawl collar, very generously sized, kind of a wrap over, just a inner button, outer button, beautiful coat. And in these fabrics, it is just so gorgeous. You can quilt it or not. I quilted through the layers, and I used this black fabric here on the whole inside of it. I'll show you. And I machine quilted it, which actually with these, because they are such kind of a looser weave, I don't know if I would machine quilt it again. I would probably hire a quilter to do it because I'm not an amazing machine quilter. I might actually like hand quilt it. But I'm thrilled with the results on that. You could also patchwork the quilt jacket, but this is a really exciting pattern. We've done it a few different ways, so I can't wait for you to see that. So we have the quilt, we have a no-sew scarf, we have garments, we have jackets. And the way that I'm going to finish this patchwork, instead of quilting on a machine, I am actually going to hand tie it. And today I thought I would show you how I hand tie quilts. But instead of sewing that whole thing together, I have this cushion front here that is essentially a miniature version of the quilt. It's just a 9-piece patchwork. I did 6-inch squares. And I am going to show you how I do my hand ties. So I normally use my leftover skeins of tapestry wool. This is an Appleton's tapestry wool, which is my favorite. I do a lot of needlepoint, so I always have a lot of different colors around. And I use my tapestry needle as well. These are not particularly sharp, but that's okay because these weaves are pretty loose and easy to get through. I have a thin layer of batting in here. I'm not even sure that you would need batting in this coverlet if you just wanted a throw because the fabrics are nice and heavy to begin with. I also didn't really think much about what I put on the back of this because this is just going to be a cushion. We're never going to see it. So I used something that was just a remnant and really thin. You can see here that I've stitched the wool all the way across. Instead of doing a bunch of individual ties, I've stitched it all the way across in one line. So you can go ahead and cut yourself several lines equal in length plus a few inches to your piece. So when I tie this entire quilt, I actually stitch all the way across the entire thing. And every time I go into the piece, that represents where I'm going to be doing a tie. So if you want to mark it first, you can do that. If you want to safety pin it together to hold the layers together first, you can do that too. Hand-tied quilts to me are a much more relaxed sort of look and feel. So I'm not so worried about them being like really perfectly stable and basted. I'm usually working on them on a tabletop, and I do have big tabletops. So I usually just put all the layers out, and I don't normally baste them. Okay. I usually just kind of use the ties stitching as my basting as I'm going. So I'm going to do another row of stitching now. I like doing my ties kind of staggered. So I've got these stitches here, here, and here. So I'm going to try and place my stitches sort of in between those spots. Okay. So I'm just going to enter, I'm going to go down here, pull through. I'm going to pull this to about here. I want to leave myself enough of a tail to hopefully be able to tie the knot. And I'm just going to wrap this stitch around the seam allowance. I should mention too, in case you're wondering, I did cut my squares for this quilt at 12.5 inches because that was the easiest thing to do because I have a 12.5 inch grid, right? And taking a 3/8 seam allowance will mean that my squares don't finish at 12, therefore the quilt won't finish at 60 by 60, but that's okay. I'm not too worried about that. You can do 1/4 inch seam allowances, again, just to be on the safe side. If you feel more comfortable because of the nature of the fabrics, you can take them a little bit deeper. Okay, now that I have these stitches in place, I'm going to go back and snip in between the stitches. This is the really fun part, actually. I usually try to wait until, like when I have done all that wool stitching through the entire tied quilt, I usually wait till all those rows are stitched through on the tabletop, and then I go snip all of them. So once you have them snipped, you go back to each of them, and it's time to tie them. And a tie is nothing more than a surgical knot. You take right over left twice, and then tie down. And then you take left over right, also twice, and then tie down. And then trim it to just about 1/2 inch. And there's your tie. So then your work is cut out for you now. You can go tie every last little one. So that's how I'm going to finish that quilt, which I think is such a cute look for this project and really appropriate, even just for the style of the fabrics. So I hope that these fabrics will inspire you to try new projects. That's my whole goal in designing unique and special wovens, is that perhaps you'll try unique and special projects. I certainly am excited when the woven collections that I do are also perfect for your quilt making, but maybe they inspire you to make patchworks that you've never done before. So thank you for taking the time to look at Narrative with me. Be sure to check out the whole collection and other ones at annamariatextiles.com. And you can keep up with me here on YouTube as well as my Instagram at Anna Maria Textiles. And I will see you next time.